One of the big concerns U.S. intelligence officials have had with COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic, is what impact it would have on terrorist organizations. And they saw two possibilities, and both have really come to fruition. In one sense, the onset of the coronavirus and the spread of the virus has limited operations in certain areas where, because it's impacting people, people are getting sick. Terrorist organizations have been forced to pull back. But as you mentioned, there are other factors that go along with the pandemic, which feed into the problems that countries have that enable terrorist organizations to thrive. Weak economies, governments that are not able to be responsive or as responsive as local populations would like when they're experiencing problems, when they need help, when they need aid. And terrorist groups can take advantage of that. And so the intelligence community is seeing some of that as well. And they're seeing that because of all these grievances, in some cases, whether it's in Africa or elsewhere, even in the online, in the virtual environment, there are some benefits to recruitment that terrorist groups are seeing as a result.
How does AFRICOM support African governments with intelligence information and training to address insurgencies such as the ones we see in the Horn of Africa, Al-Shabaab, the Boko Haram in Nigeria, and Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb?
The support that the United States provides for its African allies goes back for years to when the African Command was first stood up. The idea has always been for the United States to have what military officials call a small footprint, as opposed to some places where the U.S. has gone and gotten involved where you've had tens of thousands of troops stationed there until recently. The goal has always been to have just a small number of U.S. officials, U.S. military personnel on the ground working with African allies. But that can include a lot of intelligence help as well in key areas. For example, back in 2014, when almost 300 girls were kidnapped by Boko Haram in Nigeria, the Chibok girls, the U.S. not only started flying more surveillance in Africa, in Nigeria, looking for where the girls might have been taken, looking for what Boko Haram was doing, but they also sent intelligence experts to the embassy in Nigeria to work with their Nigerian counterparts to make the most of that information. We've seen stuff like that happen in Somalia, where until recently the U.S. had about 700 troops working on the ground to combat al-Shabaab. Now, the other thing that's going on, though, is that there's always been an emphasis on helping the civilian side of things. It's not just a military fight, it's a fight to strengthen and enhance democratic systems and support systems and the economies of these countries. This is critical because if you don't support the economies, if you don't support good governance, that the problems will all feed into increased grievances for local populations, which in turn only then feeds the ability of these terror groups to gain strength and to create more problems.
Is the U.S. involved, or does it plan to get involved, especially as we see this surge of violence and jihadist movements in the Sahel region?
In terms of the Sahel, the U.S. has been content so far to let the French take the lead and put the onus on the French and other European countries working with France to go after the jihadists there. However, talking to French officials, they will tell you that they need the U.S. specifically when it comes to surveillance, intelligence, the ability to fly drones and other planes and have the equipment to look at on the ground and what's going on. Those are critical. And so the French would like to see more of that. And the U.S. has been trying to balance those requests from the French and African allies with its need to spread those type of capabilities elsewhere around the globe. But in terms of the counterterrorism efforts, again, the U.S. so far has been content to step back a little bit, recognizing it's a threat, but let countries like France take the lead, especially in the Sahel.
We know that the United States has the technology to intercept signals, take satellite photos, and fly unmanned drones, as you mentioned, for operations. But to get actionable intelligence, where the U.S. does rely mainly on human contact. Now, from a security standpoint, some may ask, is it necessary then to increase U.S. physical presence in hotspots of Africa?
And what you generally hear is military officials, intelligence officials saying, you need a little bit of both. The advantages you have and the advantages the U.S. can provide its allies by using drones, other planes, it's what it calls ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Those capabilities are critical to being able to know where the enemy is, what the enemy might be doing. But at the same time, intelligence officials will tell you there's no replacement really for humans, for humans on the ground, people on the ground doing dangerous work of infiltrating or following, monitoring these organizations from close up, these terrorist groups, and then relaying that information back to the U.S.